Hello and welcome back to another NihongoGamer video. As you know, I've been doing YouTube videos for a number of years now, and sometimes people ask me, what gear do you use? Well, I had a good excuse to buy the same lens again because I've now got two cameras and I just love this lens so much that I thought I'd show it to you and actually unbox it. In fact, you're actually watching this video right now on this exact lens, but this is just the second one that I'm buying. Now we'll be talking about all the reasons why I like this lens so much, but first, let's get it out the box. As you can see from the box, it's a Panasonic lens, but it has the Leica branding on it, and I believe that it was designed by Leica. The main things you need to know is it's a 15mm focal length at full frame, but obviously on a micro four thirds camera like the one that I usually use, the GH4, this is going to be more like a 30mm lens because I believe it's a 2 times magnification on this form factor. f1.7 usually tells you that it's a very fast or bright lens, also tells you a little bit about how much background blurriness you're going to get when you're recording shots. Let's just open it out the box, shall we? I've got it in the black version. You can see it's noir. Let's take the box and place that over to the side. Actually, we'll take a look at these gizmos in a moment. This is the lens itself, housed in a piece of cardboard. Looks like one of those things that you can drink sake out of in Japan. Anyway, let's get the lens out of the plastic bag, and there it is. I absolutely love this lens. It's a really tiny lens, and even on the GH4, which is quite a small camera by comparison, it looks kind of funny, actually. The first time I plugged it on here, I was like, shouldn't the lens look a little bit bigger? But I'll just show you, this is what it's going to look like when I put it on this camera. Now let's just take the lens cover off, Lumix G, and there it is, the bare lens of the Leica 15mm 1.7, a spherical DG Summilux, whatever that means. And one of the main things I love about this lens so much is that when you rotate it like this, you can actually change the aperture without fiddling with the buttons on your camera. Most cameras have a number of like dials that you flick with your finger like this, but I learned photography on a manual camera, and back in those days, you actually had the lens attached to the camera like this, and you turned the speed over here and you turned the aperture with your left hand like this. Now let's go ahead and plug it onto the camera. Just remove the body cover from the GH4 and take the body cover off the lens and make sure I don't spit on it while I'm plugging it on. Connect it to the GH4, and there it is. The camera system that I have known and loved for probably 5 years now, maybe 6 years that I've been using a GH4 setup. And this is one of the biggest purchases, most important purchases that I ever made on this channel, is getting a camera with good video performance. I mean, iPhones are very impressive, but there's very subtle differences that you start to notice between using your phone and using a dedicated camera. Anyway, the picture quality is sterling out of this thing, and the lens I particularly love because it's a wide lens that also has a very wide aperture for, again, that background blurriness. Now the thing is, when you're trying to choose a lens for YouTube, you don't usually choose the widest possible lens if you're trying to get a blurry background. In fact, if you choose a lens with a longer focal length, like 50mm or 90mm, or something longer than this is like 15, it's very, very wide, it actually makes it harder to get a blurry background on a wide lens. But usually when I'm shooting on my GH4, I have the camera like right here in front of me, and I like to have that little preview window right next to me. I've had a very organically built system over the years, and it's not like I have a camera like 10 miles away over there and I have all the lights set up. I always wanted to be able to just jump straight into videos by flipping open my screen like this, having it really close and just setting it on a tripod and just talking directly to the camera. And as a result, I needed a wide lens so that I could actually set it up quite close to me. If you have the luxury of setting your camera a little further away, in fact, I've got the camera set up maybe a meter away from myself right now. If I set it even further back, I could start to use things like 30mm lenses, 25mm lenses, or 50mm lenses. But I knew that I wanted to continue using the same setup that I've been using this whole time, and so now I have two of this exact same lens. Let's go ahead and take a picture, shall we? We need something to take a picture of. Alright, so I couldn't find anything else, so let's just use this Blake figurine and we'll take a picture of her now. You get a really nice focus, even at a very close distance. Probably what? I'm 7 or 8 centimeters away from the subject, and I can still focus on it just like so, and you get tons of bokeh in the background. But again, this is because I'm right up close to the subject. If I were to take a photo from quite far away from the subject, then it's not going to seem like the background is really as blurry. It's probably better if I'm going to be taking a picture from a good distance with a longer focal length. But again, I love to take photos and videos from right up close, and so this actually works out really well for me. Now there's actually a button here on the GH4. If I press it, it will give me a preview of what the image will look like if I stop down the aperture. So if I go back to 1.7, you can see that it's super blurry in the background, but if I go down to something like f9, take the same picture, you get much more of the background in focus. So as you can see, you've got to choose the lens that actually suits your situation, and most of the time I'm in a cramped room or a room that doesn't have as much space as I would like, and so I'm usually a lot closer to the camera than is entirely necessary. And so that's why for me, choosing a really wide 15mm lens works really well. I used to shoot on an APS-C camera. It was a Canon EOS 650 or 600D. It's a really old DSLR, and I could only shoot videos for 8 minutes before the camera would overheat and just give up. Which is actually the main reason why the initial videos on my channel years and years ago, I'm speaking really quickly, and the only reason is because my camera would heat up and I had to get the whole introduction to my video shot in the first 8 minutes. The Panasonic GH4 has a 2x magnifier every time you use a lens, so even though it's a 15mm lens, it's the equivalent of using something more like a 28 or 30mm lens on a full frame camera. So for the first few years of the channel, I was shooting on this Canon 600D with a 1.5-ish type crop, which meant that my 18mm lens was actually more like 28 or 30mm. And so when I went to the GH4, I was like, if I buy a 25mm lens or the 50mm lens, then it's going to be the equivalent of more like a 50 or 100mm lens, and I'm going to have to step even further and further away from the camera. So I needed this really wide lens so that I could get the equivalent of what used to be like 18mm on my Canon or 28mm on a full frame camera. I'm sure I screwed up some of the mathematics in there, but you get the general gist. Anyway, going back to the lens, you can see there's a thread cover here on the outer edge of the lens, and the reason this is here is because you might want to use this lens hood. I've never actually had much use for this, but sometimes when you're in bright sunlight, you'll need to like get rid of sun flare, which is getting into the lens but not actually part of the image, and you'll have to like use a hat or use your hand to like cover it, or you could just use one of these lens hoods. I don't actually know how effective they are, but again, I don't really use it, and also it looks kind of perverse. But one thing I am going to attach to the inside thread of this lens is a lens protector. Now I just picked this up online for about $13, $14. It's a Kenko MC protector. It doesn't do anything except protect the lens, and that's good because I don't want any like hazy effects or sepia tones or blue shifts to the color. 46mm is chosen because this is a 46mm thread. You've got to make sure that you buy the right lens filter when you're buying filters for your lenses, and I will leave this on here for the rest of its life because I don't want to damage the lens. And if you were to actually drop it on something, or if you were to accidentally scratch it with your fingernails or something hard, then either you'll have a scratch on everything you video in the future, or you'll have to send it off for maintenance. And I've never actually done it before, but I'm pretty sure it's quite expensive to replace glass elements of a lens. You might end up it might actually just be cheaper to buy a new one. As far as I know, it has absolutely no effect on the quality of the photos that you take, and it keeps the lens protected, so why not? Anyway, that's all for this video. Just wanted to talk about the camera gear that I use because people do ask me sometimes, and I don't think this is the perfect setup for everyone. This is mostly just because I like this setup. I think most people probably use a longer lens on their camera and they just set it a little bit further back. But because I used to use this camera for family photography of my own family, but also just to use it for video stuff on YouTube, and also because I was often in cramped, small apartments where I couldn't actually put the camera far away, it was like, okay, here's my desk, here's the wall. You can't really go further than the wall. You'd have to like move your desk away from the wall or set it up as I have done now where the camera's actually in the middle of the room. I didn't always have the luxury of a very large room, and so having a wide angle lens was critical for being able to shoot videos at all. So I hope you found this video useful. If you're looking for a lens for your camera, or you're looking for a camera and you want to know how it performs, or you just want to understand how do I get the sort of image that I usually take for these videos for this channel. If you want to ask more questions about the gear I use, be sure to leave a comment below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. That's all for today. I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video.